There's a corner in my house where I play guitar, but I've never had a place to set my drink there. So today I'm going to show you how I made this low-profile concrete cocktail table with a built-in light to fix that. Let's get to it. I started by breaking down some melamine to make the form for the concrete base. I planned to embed a threaded rod in the concrete for the lamp cord to run through, so I used that to set the height for the base. I wanted the base to have a slight pyramid shape, so first I decided the base footprint should be 8 inches long. Then for the top, I found the center and then measured 2.5 inches on either side of the center to get the taper from the base to the top that I thought would look good. Next came the moment I realized I probably should use a legitimate tripod when filming. Luckily I can say no cameras were harmed in the filming of this video. Back to the build, I cut both side pieces and then drew the taper cut line by connecting the bottom edge to the top mark. Then, using a spare piece of wood as a straight edge, I cut the taper with my jigsaw. Then I used that piece to draw the cut lines on the other side. Now this will make more sense later, but for the other two sides, I used the taper to set the blade angle so that the other two sides would sit flush when the form was assembled. Next, I found the center of what will be the base of the form, and then I used a Forstner bit to cut a hole with the flange's raised center to sit down in so that it would sit flat on the base during the concrete pour. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to secure the flange and the threaded rod to the base during the pour, so I messed around with different washers and nuts until I found a combo that worked. To assemble the form, I started by adding a few pocket holes to all the sides. Then I used some hot glue and clamps to hold the sides in place while I drilled the screws into the pocket holes. As I mentioned earlier, you can now see how using the angle of the taper to cut the base for the other two sides allowed those pieces to rest flush against the tapered sides. To connect the sides to each other, I added some screws through one side and into the edge of the other. To seal the form, I laid a bead of silicone caulk across every seam and then used a metal fondant ball tool to push the excess to the sides. Once the caulk dried, I simply peeled up the excess lines, leaving a perfect caulk line. Next, I superglued screws into the slots on the flange to give the concrete something to grab onto, and then I used that washer and nut system I figured out earlier to mount the threaded rod to the form's base. Then I attached the last side and the form was ready for the concrete pour. I made sure the form was level, and then I mixed up some Quikrete 5000 and water and poured it into the form. As I poured the concrete, I periodically poked the concrete to get rid of any air bubbles. I also used my palm sander without a sanding disc on it to vibrate the form to also help bring any air bubbles to the top. I let the concrete cure for a couple days, and then I took it out of the form to see how we did. As you can see, I didn't get all of the air bubbles out, and had some small imperfections. I could have made a very thin concrete mix to act as a slurry coat to spread on the surface to get rid of those, but I ended up liking the imperfect look for this project and left it as is. With the base complete, I moved on to the table portion of the build. Using my jointer, I started by getting one flat edge on a beautiful piece of sapele. Next, I marked out the width I wanted the table to be and ripped it down on the table saw. I decided I wanted to add a couple, let's call them racing stripes, of walnut down each side, so I set my fence to the right width, ripped one side, flipped the board, and ripped the other. Doing it this way ensured I had equal spacing from side to side. To make sure I lined up the correct grain pattern, I added a mark on both pieces that I could line up during the glue up. Next, I cut the half-inch strips of walnut. I then brought all the pieces back to the shop for glue up. As you can see, I'm not shy when it comes to using clamps. Once the piece had dried, I brought it back outside to clean up the edges on the table saw, and then used my palm router to add a nice chamfer to the top and the bottom. I decided to add the chamfer to both the top and the bottom because I felt like it gave the table a little bit more shape and presence. Next, I gave it a quick sand and then also cleaned up the chamfer edge with a file. To prep for finish, I first popped the grain with some water and then gave it one last sand with some 400 grit sandpaper. Before applying finish, I also used my branding iron to add my logo to the bottom side of the table. For finish, I went with Maker Brand's Simple Finish with wax because, well, as the name suggests, it's simple. All you do is wipe it on, let it penetrate for a few minutes, and then wipe off the excess. And that's it. Back to the base. To protect the floor and also provide a space for the lamp cord to run through, I added some feet to the bottom of the base using some E6000 adhesive. To attach the table to the base and to create the built-in light, I used a combination of pipes and fittings. I knew the approximate shape and combination I wanted, so I just combined different pieces until I got it right. To figure out where to drill the pilot holes to mount the table to the flange, I added some blue tape to the bottom, clamped it to the flange, and then marked the hole alignment on the blue tape with a marker. Then I simply drilled some pilot holes using the tape trick to make sure I didn't drill too deep, and then I attached the flange to the table. With the flange mounted, I moved on to final assembly. I started by feeding the lamp cord through the threaded rod in the base, and then through the pipe configuration. To be able to thread it through all of the pipes, I had to assemble the pieces as I went. Once I was threaded through the maze of pipe, I attached the socket at the very top. Next, I attached the table to the base, which simply required screwing the mounted flange to the pipe. Then I could attach the top lamp portion and pull the lamp cord tight. Instead of using something really permanent to secure the socket to the pipe, I use some hot glue. This will allow me to separate them later if I need to fix something. And with that, the concrete cocktail table is done. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that subscribe and bell button. I also post a lot of behind the scenes and smaller scale projects as Ethan Carter Designs on Instagram and would love to have you follow me there as well. Here are a couple more videos I know you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching.